I, I, I asked members online and in the other side of the room, the attendees, to bear with us while we try to deal with this technical glitch. I should also note that with us also is Mr. Sherlock King, manager of markets, I believe? Mr. Sherlock King from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. And Mr. King, at some point, this committee, you can also indicate to me now, this committee, I believe, is desirous of hearing from you. And I should ask perhaps here and now, are you available on Friday?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I think we have some other important, I think, matters to attend to on Friday, but I would
Okay.
probably like to know the
No
time
problem. No
if you're
problem.
referring to. And at the same time, too, I also have another competing matter taking place at 11 o'clock, so I may have to nip out and come back in
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay, fine, thank you. We will speak with Minister Weir. Okay, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Alex, Mr. The clerks at the bar, clerk at the bar table has to allow me to conduct the meeting, though. Thank you very much, Aunt Minister Goodenedgel. Mr. Alexander, I would now wish to invite you on behalf of Barvin or any designee of yours to say, in fact, please bear with me. There are some housekeeping matters that we really do need to dispense with. Colleagues, the minutes of the previous meeting are not as yet available, and I would like to have a motion, please, that we could defer the minutes. Thank you, Minister Humphrey. Seconder, please. Seconded. Now, we turn then to the issue of oral presentations. Barvin. Mr. Alexander, I would be grateful if you could take the floor, please. And in the event that you wish to make an oral statement before you field any questions, then I'd be happy to have that oral statement. My proposed way of treating to this matter is to have those persons who appear before us have the opportunity to make any oral statement that they may wish to have in the event that they have not already sent a written submission. And even if they have given a written submission, they may wish to give an abbreviated version of that to the committee. I would then want to exercise the chairman's discretion to initiate any questioning that I may have to offer, and equally to offer to every single member of this committee an opportunity to question, but you will not be able to monopolize the floor for more than a period of 5 minutes. That will facilitate a smooth rotation from committee member to committee member and give every other member an opportunity to speak, and equally you would have an opportunity to come back. That is the way I propose to deal with it. I am sure that in as much as many of the members present were having their own discussion that has not been followed, and I will be asked to explain that one more time. So that for the avoidance of doubt, I'm going to say one more time, it is my intention to have those people present as attendees offer any oral statement that they may wish to offer. In the event that they wish to do so, we take the oral statement, and then we have an opportunity to field questions. I will go first in most cases, but then every member of the committee will have 5 minutes to field some questions, and then yield the floor to another member so as to enable a smooth rotation across all the membership of the committee, ensure that everyone has equal opportunity to participate. You can come back a second, third, or fourth time if you so choose to do. I hope that I have now made myself abundantly clear. I welcome Mrs. Tony Moore online. Mr. Alexander, you now have the floor, sir.
Say good and blessed morning to all the members of the committees.
Good morning, sir.
Barvin is extremely pleased to be here.
And we are very pleased to have you, sir. Now, Mr. Alexander, is there any opening comment that you would wish to make before you take any questions from us?
Yes, please.
Please proceed.
Yes, thank you so much. In the year of our Lord, 2021, I sit here in the people's house by the grace of God and his journey in mercies to proclaim his year of liberty for the mother of all black economic enfranchisement in Barbados. This bill being moved in this honorable house is emotionally historic. This has brought into being the vendor's Magna Carta, the People's Commercial Bill of Rights. The decriminalization is a national self-respecting gesture that has broken ties with the colonial disrespect shown to our most foundational business heritage and cultural icon, Ma Vendor. That is what Barvin calls vending. Ma Vendor, the mother of us all. And so I wrote, under the inspiration of the Almighty, Mother of all our enfranchisements. Ambition was it, if you ever had a flaw. Still all your days were days of oppression, when evil wore the fineries of law. Vendor, how they maligned your image. Vendor, how they cast it in scorn. But take your place, O national treasure, take your place, O heritage icon. Let my best hand forget all its functions. Ever I forget the hand that carried the tray, that bravely bore the stress all to make us the cream of the crop, the pick of the day. Carry her cry from these streets, children, to your brothers in Powers Hall. For justice, ma asking, who calling? Lord, help we to help she to call. And the last verse, written so many years ago, while people like Junior Greenwich was struggling, was in the struggle, fighting, while people like Mr. Alsop had struggled before us, before there was any organization to represent our cause, while Robert Maloney was still struggling, and Valentino Barrow, who says he was born in the market, in Fairchild Street Market. Well, all these things were, well, all the forces, everything, the social forces, the political forces, we had even the armed forces were against us. This last verse says, justice shall soon lift up her balance, and under the weight of Ma Vendor's prayer, our foes shall all crumble and tumble down. But what will you do to hasten that day? Carry her cry from the wilderness children. Tell every passerby, it's my hand beneath the hands of justice. Help we to help she lift it high. And we are so thankful for this government this government that has made my vendor's prayer a reality, that has come to the rescue of the people. For we are the people. This is our most foundational sector, business sector. We speak about historic Bridgetown, and we say that vendors are the what? The living heritage of historic Bridgetown. People want to speak of dead architecture. There's no life in Bridgetown if they are not vendors. And we are thankful for this opportunity to be here, to be not only a witness to history, but also to participate. Thank you so much, and God bless you, and God bless the proceedings.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. I appreciate deeply your recognition of the historical nature of this endeavor and its relationship to the challenge and struggle of our people throughout history. I also, as Minister of Commerce, have to note and recognize as well the reality that you have observed, which is that life in our city is inextricably linked to vending. I want to begin by asking you to reflect on a matter that has attracted the attention of this committee. It might seem like a small matter, but there is an honorable member who unfortunately is not now present, who had raised this matter, and it has resonated with me to some extent. I feel that I should give you an opportunity to speak to it very early. The member for St. Michael East, Mr. Trevor Prescott, had indicated to us that even though this bill is entitled an act to provide for the regulation of vending in Barbados and the protection of rights of vendors and matters related thereto, and it has as its short title, it might simply be cited as a National Vending Act of 2021. He has indicated that the term vending, for some people, carries such a stigma that we may wish to reflect on whether or not we want the bill, the Act of Parliament when it is passed, to be cited in the way it is cited, which is the National Vending Act. I myself feel that though it is very true that it has carried a stigma, there is no shame attached to vending. But it is not for me or for any of us simply just to invoke our personal beliefs or value systems on this matter. I think it is really appropriate for the committee to hear the views of those who vend on this matter. And I therefore wanted to begin by inviting you to comment on the title, the National Vending Act, and to indicate to me your thoughts initially as to whether this is an appropriate title for the bill.
I never see the sense, sir, of running from who you are. I am black. I never see the sense of I running from the term black. Even Negro, I have never seen the sense, right? I'll be truthful, even as far, I would go as far as to say nigger. If you're saying nigger is black, I never see the sense. I am who I am, right? And proudly so. I never see the sense of running from being African because somebody looks down on Africa, on Africans. I therefore will not see the sense in running from, we embrace the title. We embrace all that we are, right? We need not people to rename us and keep on renaming us, right? For we to be proud of who we are. We are very proud of who we are. We understand that let me put it this way, be truthful with you, through the collective effort of historians such as Hillary Beckles, Sir Hillary Beckles, and Trevor Marshall. We commission through the efforts of persons like David Commission, Ambassador Commission. We have been re-educated, made aware of who we really are, and we have embraced it. Not only through their effort, but through our own history, understanding. We have persons like Mr. Alsop will tell you with pride who we are. So we reject wholesale. I assure every member here in Barvin right now, wholesale reject such. We thank him for his thought towards us, and he only means well. But no, we proudly embrace the title of vendor.
Thank you, sir. I will only ask one other question, and that also arose out of, well, at this time, I will only ask one other question, and this also arose out of the deliberations we've had thus far. And it turns to the issue of the development of this very important business of vending. There are two schools of thought before us. There is one which suggests that at the age of 18, it is the best stage of entry because you are in law no longer a minor, and therefore you are fully, I suppose, entitled and constituted legally to trade and engage in commercial activity, make contracts, etc. There's, however, a school of thought that we should be more developmental in our thinking and try to broaden the base of opportunity for our young people, many of whom need to have business opportunities legally in Barbados, and that we should have vending beginning at age 16 as being an activity that is legally recognized. I do not know, and I do not presume to know, and therefore I'm asking you, sir, from your vast experience in this matter, what your views are about the current practice with respect to the age at which people begin to vend in Barbados, and do you share the view that it would be helpful to the business of the enterprise of vending if we were to stretch it to age 16?
Let me be very practical again, right? We talking about people leaving school. People leaving school, people generally leave school to work. And if the age is 16, I think that is the general age at which people leave school in Barbados. And if they are able to enter into the world of work, they should be able to enter into their own enterprise. And therefore, we would be, I know, every one of us here again would be in agreement with age 16 being that age.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, I will have some other questions for you before you leave the chair, but I want to allow other members of the committee to have an opportunity to participate. I think I should properly begin by inviting the Leader of the Opposition, and I would invite any other members who care to have the floor to properly indicate in the accustomed manner their desire to intervene. Leader of the Opposition, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, Mr. Alexander and your team, and thank you for being here. I appreciated very much your brief opening sentiments rendered in rather poetic terms. And I wonder if I may prevail on you, with the chairman's leave, to ask of you a copy. You know, I'm serious about that. I am very serious about that. And I hope it is available in written or printed form. I get a copy. And I thank you for that. The second thing I want to say is you must perhaps be careful to observe that while I do understand the sentiment you expressed when you made reflection on your appreciation to government for taking this step, that in fact it is the Parliament of Barbados that is taking this step, and this legislation will be approved or otherwise by the Parliament of Barbados, even
Sure.
though it becomes government policy or public policy.
Sure.
There will be independent senators who will have to give their assent to this bill, and opposition senators in the other place, and certainly at least one opposition embodiment in this, one formally recognized opposition embodiment in this lower house. So I'm trying to urge you to remember to appreciate the effort of the Parliament, even though you also appreciate the effort of the government. We're on the same page with that, right, Mr. Alexander?
Very much so,
All
sir.
right, very much so.
Very much so.
I know you to be a man of principle.
Thank you, sir.
I have two questions for you, really. It's fairly different sides of the same coin. Is there anything in the bill that constitutes a significant concern for you and for Barvin? That's one aspect. The other side of it, is there anything that you'd like to see added to the legislation that would better improve the efforts that Parliament is making to empower vendors and to decriminalize the activity of vending?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let us be very clear. Barvin has been part of the process we have been a part of this process, right, of the content of the bill, and I've studied it. You know, things can be put in. Things can be put in after you have had consultation and such like, because it is not a Barvin bill. It is a bill for the nation. Let me say very clearly that your first thought concerning it being an act of Parliament, we are very, very, very much aware of that. We are national in our thinking. We understand that that both sides of the house belong to the people.
If I may interject,
Right.
Don't worry about Julia. But
No, I'm not going to go very.
I know. I'm just.
Right, I'm not going very far with that.
I'm just
yeah.
trying to clarify that when I made that comment, it was more for
Yeah.
it was more for the reflection of the chair of the meeting than for yourself.
Right, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we want to be very clear about those matters. But I have studied the bill, studied it carefully, and I am very satisfied. There are those who have raised at least one person, prominent person who works with Barvin, who works closely with Barvin, who was concerned about certain restrictions, certain laws. And I said to that person, those laws are necessary. He was talking about licensing and such like. We know the benefits. We are the ones who have pushed licensing, right? The free for all sounds nice, but the free for all is chaos. And we are past that stage. We are talking about organizing. There is no development without organizing, without bringing together, without having cooperative understanding, right? And therefore, we know that to be able to register all vendors would make sense within the context of organization, right? And development. You are able to track. You are able to help, assist financially. You don't know who is part of the industry, and if you can approach them, right, with all the aid that is necessary. If we didn't know it before, my brother and fellow vendor and soldier Fox would tell you, with even when government needed to give financial aid to vendors, It should have been an easy process, but because we did not have a registration of vendors, to this day is not a simple thing. We're still trying to struggle to get all to access those funds that are available to legitimate vendors. So we are very pleased with the legislation. It has a developmental part to it, which is the vending policy. That is what we really pleased about, right? That they would have a vending policy that speaks to the development of vending. Yes, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Are there any requests for the floor? Minister Humphrey?
Thank you, and good morning. Good morning, Mr. Alexander, Mr.
And good
Maloney,
morning, sir.
Mr. Barrow, Mr. Greenwich, and Mr. Alsop. Mr. Alexander, it's always good to see you.
Here, same here.
Thank you so much. During the course of our deliberations and conversation, we did have extended discussion around under Clause 18.1 around the general obligations of vendors. And specifically, the debate arose around that a vendor shall not, while vending, use abusive language or make insulting gestures, as well as consume or be under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And I just wanted to get your take on that particular clause. Has it caused you any concern? And if so, do you think we need to make any adjustments to it? So I just wanted your opinion on that particular clause before I share mine as it relates to how I manage the fish markets. Thank you.
Yes, again, thanks for the question. We are very clear, again, that there must be order. We are about bringing order to our sector. If there will be an organized sector, we are committed. We are absolutely committed that this sector is going to be orderly according to our own upbringing and training. This is not something foreign to us. We were trained in the village that we should have respect and order, and certain things should be done or should not be done. And as far as vending is concerned, when a person gets on that spot, they have come to a place of business. It must be understood that way. If we have practices that are business-like, we will automatically be respected. Right? When we have practices that are not business-like, where we are encouraging nonsense and abuse right, and people to be under influences that will bring that type of behavior, we are doing ourselves no favor, the nation no favor, right? We are therefore about that. If you want to curse and get on, start home. That is how we see it in Barvin. And I am sure that I have the support of all who are gathered here and the general membership of Barvin. You would find that especially in our Barvin market, you come through, you will find a completely nice and orderly market. I call it a PG market where the children could come. And it should be so throughout Barbados. We're going to take the lead. The PRO, he says, he coined a beautiful phrase, Barvin puts Barbados first. Thank you, sir.
I think that I seem to recall hearing of another institution that is similarly minded with respect to how one prioritizes Barbados, Mr. Alexander. The name of the institution eludes me at the moment, but I'm sure that I've come across such an institution that puts the country first. I caught Senator Cummings caught my eye, and then Minister Ford in that order. Before you go, Senator Cummings, let me just also say, Mr. Alexander, that it has been drawn to my attention that Mr. Maloney, Mr. Barrow, Mr. Greenwich, and also Mr. Alsop have been equipped with mics. So if any of these gentlemen wish to take the floor by way of answering questions, then you are fully entitled so to do. You are not to feel restricted in any way. We want to get the fullest possible input from all of you gentlemen and to get an understanding from your breadth of collective experience about the merits and if there are any demerits of this bill. Please proceed, Minister Cummings.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'd like to join the colleagues who have spoken before in welcoming Mr. Alexander. I listened to you today, and I've listened to you on every occasion where I've had the privilege of hearing you address the nation or the issue of vending, and I can see very well why you have become the voice of ma vendor. And I very much enjoyed your early intervention and your brief comments. I do have two queries of you. In our earlier discussions on the actual legislation, there were two things that I want to raise with you. One, the relevance of the vending zones and the practice of vending to the tourism sector, and the fact that many visitors to the island genuinely enjoy coming to our markets. They want to have that authentic experience. And I wanted to get a sense from you on how you believe this bill or any of the appended regulations would add value to the integration of the tourism sector by way of visitors engaging with you in the market. And a number of the ways that have been proposed, which we will hear a bit later, would include things like training, engagement with our marketing entities, so that perhaps there can be a regular standard set for how to engage and so on. And in particular, I want to raise that as it relates to our beaches. That's the first question. And then the second one is specific to the legislation at Part 6, which speaks about relocation and eviction of vendors. We did have an extensive discussion in the committee earlier in the week on how we could treat to the question of relocation and eviction, so that there is both an obligation on the part of the vendors, but also that there is an obligation on the part of the state. And by that, I mean that we were discussing and proposing that with the eviction notice being given 30 days and consultation having taken place previously, that we would want to ensure that the consultation would include representative bodies or associations, which would include entities like Barvin. I wanted to get your sense on that. And then secondly, whether or not there ought to be standard operating procedures on the part of the state that would then require the state to enforce the eviction notice once the time has expired in collaboration with the vendor as well. So those would be my queries to you. Three comments specifically: tourism and training and engagement, in particular on beaches, the incorporation of the provisions for relocation, to have a consultative mechanism for the associations and representative bodies, and thirdly, what would be the standard operating procedures for the state to ensure that the relocation and eviction notices are enforced in it.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you, Chair.
Yes. Let me start with the last question. Again, life to me is very simple. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Justice, again, is simple. It is that. And in justice is represented by scales, because there must be a balance. Wherever you find a balance, you have justice. If a thing is off balance, it will be unjust. You cannot be asking persons to manage places, manage zones, manage markets, manage operations, and they don't have the tools to do so. to keep it orderly and regulated. And therefore we know that while we would want to believe that every human being is a darling, all are not, or are simply not. And therefore you have to have sanctions, you have to have penalties, you have to have something to keep persons in order, knowing that if they are in breach of or continue to be in breach of the order, that they can be removed. We believe that obviously as we move towards a fuller development, we would want that also to be reflected in their representation, that they should be represented at the highest level in such a case, right? So we would be for the inclusion of representatives, whether they be associations or even legal representation, right, at such a time. Okay. So I think that one would be simple for us. When we speak to vendors and tourism, well, vendors, let me put it this way, throughout the world, tourists like to interact with vendors. We have said we actually have a document that relates to tourism, community, and vending, and it speaks about the interaction that this contact that is made with vendors and tourists, that they like to have that interaction, that they come to the city oftentimes, right, to have that type, want to see vendors, right? I think that vendors are the most authentic brief of who people are, right? You can get the feeling of who people are, and I feel too it is it helps to establish a niche market for tourism, because people like to meet people. There's nothing more precious in the world than people. People talk about all of these things that we just build and make and say we build for people to come and see. Yes, but people are attracted most to people. And we say that nobody can be you but you. But we understand clearly that nobody can be you but you. So therefore, it's a niche when they are able to interact with the people at that cultural level. Vendors, you cannot find, it's very difficult when you're talking about culture to leave out the vendor. You'll see them in paintings, all sorts of things. Not now. That's always been strange. That these ones who they are painting after painting, and when it comes to tourism, they are big up, but then criminalize otherwise. Never made sense. So we are thankful that we've come to this point, and we can have again, development is about moving forward, collecting all the pieces, bringing it together, and therefore we're talking about training now as we're going forward. Training is nice. We can be trained, retrained, right? Okay, retooled, all of those things. Okay, so as far as beach vending is concerned, right? I just be completely honest. While we have spoken to beach vending, we do not have very many beach vendors in the association. As we go forward, we would like to bring in that sector, all the players within that sector that does business, not because Barvin is not only as people say, vendors, but it is entrepreneurs, right? It embraces a lot. So we ourselves are developing, okay, to meet the needs of our people and our nation. And we are looking forward to very much having a strong relationship with the Ministry of Tourism, with tourism. Well, we have a relationship with tourism, right? But we're looking forward to playing or strengthening all that we are strengthening it and doing all that we can do to play our part. If there's anything that I miss, you can ask. I think that that would have covered it. Thank you again for.
Thank you. And I assure you, Mr. Alexander, that I am sure that Senator Cummings, even after she had offered those questions, realized that it was a bit of a mouthful. What I will attempt to do as we go forward is to make sure that members can utilize their 5 minutes by coming back on a second and third question so that you don't have to strain your memory to get it all in. Minister Ford.
First of all, let me thank Mr. Alexander for being here with us this morning. I first want to say that I'm following on from Minister Humphrey's question because I think that was a very important question that Minister Humphrey alluded to at Section 8, Clause 18. And I want to thank Mr. Alexander for the total response. For me, the answer would have passed the sobriety test because I truly had a concern about vending and the consumption of alcohol. My question to you, though, Mr. Alexander, is at the sixth schedule, and I want to know if there is any glaring omission as we look to constitute the committee, if there are any glaring omissions that we would have obviously left out of this committee. And you, as a person who is involved, and you, your organization is in the whole center of this discussion in terms of vending, and as a representative of the largest community, I want to know if there's any other agency or organization that would have been left off of this committee that you would think that is important for us to lend a voice to this whole aspect of vending and how we go forward.
Yes, I would have wished that Wayside Vendors Association would have been here. If you notice, I pay absolute respect to history. And they are the association that went before us. The reality is that Barvin represents 99.9% of the vendors by the choice of the vendors. But we pay absolute respect from the beginning to Wayside Vendors Association. We have at least one member here that was a member of Junior Greenwich, right? I think that I did give Parliament the contact number for Mr. Keith Franklin. Mm-hmm. So I do not know if they made contact, and I do not know.
Perhaps I can intervene here,
yes,
Mr. Alexander, because I think that you may have misappreciated the thrust of the question.
Yeah,
I am aware, and I thank you on behalf of the committee for your assistance in enabling us to reach Mr. Franklin, and we have done so. No, he is not, or his organization that he represents, the Association of Wayside Vendors, are not going to be able to be here today, but we do intend to treat to them in the same way that we're treating to you now,
yes,
but at a later date. If I understood the question correctly, I think that what Minister Ford was pointing you to was the sixth schedule to the bill, which is Well, I have it. I am hoping that you have a copy in front of you too.
No, I don't have. Yes,
Oh,
so
you don't have?
Just read for me. Maybe even if I have it, I do not think
Oh.
I will be able to see it.
Oh.
I don't have. Oh yeah, we have.
Right. And if you look at
Yes,
page
yes, I do.
63 on that hard copy, you will see that there's a
Mm-hmm.
National Vending Committee set up. And
Oh,
that
okay.
at page 63, it gives you the constitution of the committee in terms of the constituent elements of the committee, the members of the committee, to put it very simply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Now, in that, at 1D, there's provision made for a representative of the Association of Wayside Vendors. I think that what Minister Ford is inviting you to do is to run your eye over page 63 from top to bottom, from A through to P,
Right.
and tell us whether you can think of any entity with whom you work or who you feel would be a appropriate stakeholder that is not represented in that list. I think that is the thrust of Minister Ford's question.
Yes. Thank you. I understand. Thanks for bringing the clarification. 66.
63, page 63, the sixth schedule.
Right. I have looked through the composition, right, of the, yes, please, thank you. Of
Take your
the
time, take your time.
committee.
Mhm.
And let me put it this way, when I did, so I could not say, it would be something that I would have to look at again, to
Okay,
be truthful, right?
Okay.
But I did not see any,
fine.
that I could remember thinking about the left out so and so. But
Fine.
these are matter I would like to put to my own executive body, right?
And let me help Minister Ford a little bit because I appreciate his question. We are really looking at trying to make sure we've captured all of the relevant stakeholders. I would want to invite Mr. Maloney or Mr. Barrow or any of the others present, if they can have a look at that sixth schedule too.
Yeah,
Even if we came back to the question, if they could just have a look at that sixth schedule and see whether there's any entity that comes to mind that they may wish to recommend that we consider.
You got it? You have it? With me?
Yeah.
Only me? You have yours? You don't have this? Oh, you can't see that.
While they think about that, Mr. Alexander, I have another question for you that I'll just throw here now because it's an easy question to answer, and you will then be able to give your colleagues a little bit of time to look at the sixth schedule. There's been a wide discussion on the substance of this bill during the course of the last few days at this committee level. One of the things that was raised by the leader of the opposition was his concern about the fee. There's a fee structure applied in the legislation, and I think that what we are proposing is that a fee of $100 be charged for the license, an annual license at $100. Is that correct, Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel? I think that was what my memory tells me. But my question to you is, and let me be very sure-footed here because
Sorry, Chair. Third schedule.
in the
as a
third, yes,
listing
okay,
of-
fine. So the question then really for you, Mr. Alexander, is with respect to the question of fees that may be charged. I am looking at you can just trust me on this because I know the others are looking at the sixth schedule. For vending licenses for vendors not operating on a beach or on an esplanade or in a garden or park, the plan is to charge $100. Renewal of a vending license for vendors not operating on a beach or an esplanade or in a garden or park, that's a renewal fee. That would be $100, and there would be annual fees. If you're going to operate on a beach or an esplanade or in a garden or park in Barbados, your vending license would be $150. And the renewal of a license to operate on a beach or an esplanade would be $100. For those people who are occasional vendors who would be just operating, let us say, at a festival or some sporting event or something like that, it would be a $50 fee. And then the vendor's permit, if you were not operating on a beach, would be $25. Now, even though the leader of the opposition had not said it was too much money, I think his thrust was that he could not see the necessity for a fee. I think my question to you, however, before we go to whether it's necessary otherwise, do you feel that these fees are reasonable?
Let me say point blank. What I'm going to say will be controversial, and I don't mind being controversial on the right side of controversy. This mendicant type of mentality that even politicians have encouraged is not correct. While you are facilitating business people, you must not give them the impression that everything is to be for free. This, whatever it is, still have people to be paid, whether it be administration, whatever. That will be part of the process of making sure that they are able to do business. Barvin has been clear from the beginning that we want facilitation. We don't want somebody to kill we with fees and with, we don't want people to kill us that way.
Okay.
But we are very clear. And when you have a situation, and the Honorable Mr. Humphrey, right, he's listening. You have a situation where I understand that in the fish market they pay 75 cents or something like that to use the stall a day or something like that. Run water for the whole day. This is taxpayers' money. We talk about government money, but this is taxpayers' money. I believe that we as a community, that we should also pay our way. We should also contribute to our development. We need to contribute to our development. And when you do contribute to your development, you have a better sense of pride. You therefore know that whatever facilities and whatever is given to you is not to be just destroyed, because you know that you got your money in there. And our structure, right? It also protects. To be honest with you, at one stage I remember I talking about the truth now. We are here to give testimony. And I remember when I was fighting for Cavens Lane, fighting for improvement of what government was billing. A permanent secretary said to me, but with all due respect, Mr. Alexander, they're getting it free. So because they was getting it free, you could give them whatever you feel like giving them. And it was hard to argue against that point, right? I am saying, yes, if you're giving them free, you still should give them the best you should give them, right? But understand that if that is how people will be thinking about you, we want to change that. We want to change that whole thing, that whole concept, right? So we are not finding that is wrong to like anybody else. What we want to do, what we want to see is that government provides an atmosphere where we can make money, right? You got infrastructure, buildings like Cheapside that we warn against because it was only about jigging people in the building. There was no business plan. This is a new time, right? And we want to see a new regime of things. There has to be a business plan where these business people, these small business people, you plan for them in such a way that they will make money so that they can pay these fees and licenses. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Without prejudice to the desirability on my part of the Leader of the Opposition having an opportunity to have any input that he may wish to have on this matter, I also wanted to find out whether those folks next to you, seated next to you, have had a chance to look at the 6th schedule, and if they are inclined to make any comment in response to Minister Ford's previous question. If not,
I think we say it's covered
okay.
at this point.
Okay,
You know,
fine,
we may
thank
go
you.
away and we may go away and we may come and say, well,
Fine.
make a call somewhere or something.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Before you go, sir, let me just indicate to Ms. Moore, the Honorable Member for St. George North, that I see her hand up, so we will come to you next, ma'am. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Alexander, I appreciate the virtue and the value of the argument, precept you are espousing there. It's not about encouraging mendicancy on the part of anybody. It's a principle that we're looking at from the other side of the coin. $100 constitutes a nuisance fee, which the government of Barbados in 2021 and the one that will next follow in 2022 can do without. Can do without. And it's not the money value. It's the principle of the thing. Why are we charging in 2021 people a fee to get a license to earn a living? There's several professions, and some of them very lucratively positioned. And we have a couple of examples right here in this setting. Only two, obviously, only two. And it has nothing to do with the profession pursued by the members of St. Michael, St. Christchurch, West Central, or the members of St. Michael South, or the members of St. Philip South. It would have to revolve around the other two persons here present. But and we can understand that when a fee is attached to certain professions, but I don't understand in 2021 why we're charging vendors. Do I understand your argument, and you want to serve a cause and contribute to your own cause? $100 fee is a nuisance fee. And if we follow your argument to its logical conclusion, there will be those tomorrow who will say that $100 that we're asking vendors to pay for a license, providing with the kind of facilities that we want to provide them with now, the kind of services that the state is asked to provide, $100 is a nonsense, and therefore we must raise it to $500. That is the other side of where your argument leads. Now, I'm not going to argue with you very strenuously. If you and the association feel happy paying the $100, fine. I'm just advising there will be a government tomorrow that will say it should be $500 instead of $100. The fee is just a nuisance fee, in my view, humbly.
Thank you. I appreciate your view, sir. Appreciate your view. But obviously we are not of the same view. We have the PRO wishing to address that point.
Fine, and I welcome his input. Please proceed, sir. But please, before you start, please state your name for the record.
Yes, I'm uncertain of the time of day, so I will say good day to all. Valentino Barrow,
Good
Chairman
morning.
of Fairchild Street Market,
Good morning, Mr. Barrow.
PRO Parvin. I appreciate what Mr. Adderley have said, and I could understand where he's trying to put us in a perspective of futuristic things. I dare say that we do not live in the future at any given time, nor can we dwell in the past. But one thing is for certain, as long as there will be consecutive administrations, irrespective of which side of the fence they are from, Barvin will be here to champion the cause. And if an administration deemed that this nuisance fee, as is called by Mr. Adderley, should be raised, and it's beyond a point of acceptability, then we will intervene. You can depend on that. That is reliability. One thing for sure, and I'm very strong about this. Now, I have a history of 50 years of vending, and I did not take it lightly. I had the opportunity, yes, to become an engineer, but I was always drawn to vending. And I always consider myself to be a proud individual, as I'm sure many vendors see themselves in that light. And if we are advancing the cause of vending, vendors do not want to be seen as welfare costs or those depending on what we call handouts. Vendors want to be perceived as proud individuals. We want to show to the immense people that are coming out from our tertiary institutions that vending is an honorable profession.
True.
As in the light and callings of doctors, solicitors, lawyers, and all those, as you would call, on the higher standard of professions in this country or the world. We too want to be seen in a positive light. Now, if you take the vending, the highest fee of $150, and we break that down, we divide that by 12, I'm sure you would know what we arrive at. If you take the $100 and we break that down by 12, I'm sure what you would arrive at, you would tip your head down. And if you put that to the general public, they were frown on that. What is less than $10 a month to pay to earn your way? You want something over your head to protect you from the elements. That is costly. As I'm sure the Minister of Commerce would tell you, even to build some kiosks as we were dealing with the Polytechnic and Community College, and you hear the price of the material just to build a prototype. For one structure, it's immense. Where is that money coming from? It have to come from us through some form. And believe you me, government have a way of extracting it from you. I'm sure you all guys are aware, all gentlemen, illustrious members are aware of that. There's a way. If you don't get it direct, it will come indirect. But we want to be perceived in the light of positive element, a positive element, a proper and proud profession. And $100 in Barvin's view is nothing to pay for our license. We would not expect that because we see it in this light that the next administration, irrespective of the fence, would deem to raise it to $1,000 or something like that. We would not want that. And if that happens, Barvin would fight for better. I remember when I was a young lad in Fairchild Street with my granddad, and I see atrocities committed on vendors. I have that memory. I was always drawn to vending. True. And as was said in the rolling out of this proposed policy,
by the Honorable Member of Commerce, that he met a young girl, and what's the end of the story? She want to sell things. That is in her blood. And we want to put a way forward for students to see that they too can become a vendor. Because vending and becoming a vendor doesn't mean that you're stagnated. It doesn't mean that you have to be down at the bottom.
Not nice, man. That's not nice.
But you can become a business person. You can perceive yourself in that light as a business person.
True.
Proud to be in a proud profession. The original entrepreneurial avenue for black people in the days
True.
still stands, and we want to stand proud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Barrow. The Honourable Member for St. George North.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, Mr. Alexander, and to all the members of your team. Within the legislation, the proposed bill, there is an appeals process established for the hearing of any grievances that you may wish to raise. And these grievances may relate to such things as eviction notices, relocation, fees, and so on. We've heard in your contribution so far that Barvin represents the large majority of the vendors in Barbados, a very large majority, even though you've recognized that you would want to extend to beach vendors and so on. There has been some discussion within our committee so far that where the appeals process is set up and the tribunal established, that where a vendor is to be selected to represent on the tribunal, that vendor should be selected by the vendors themselves. That is through an association. The bill as it is outlined makes provision for a vendor of at least 10 years experience. And my further question to you is if you think that stipulation for a vendor of 10 years experience is a reasonable one, or if we are leaving the decision to the vendors association to determine who they want represent them, that there should be no qualification on the years of experience. There may be a person, the PRO said he has 50 years experience in vending. Mr. Alexander, you have quite a few years experience, but there may very well be someone with fewer than 10 years experience that Barvin or whatever the vending association is, because you may decide to not put Barbados first in some other iteration of your name. And I only say that jokingly because I come from an organization as well that puts Barbados first in every respect. But there may very well be a situation where there may be a vendor of fewer than 10 years experience that the associations determine may very well be the person that they would want representing them on a tribunal. So the question is, or the questions are, one, does your association support having the vendors association select the person of their choice to sit on that tribunal? And two, would the association support the bill in its current formulation to make a qualification for a 10-year period, or would it rather see that removed so that the association may choose whomever it wishes to represent them on a tribunal? Thank you.
Thank you. I could understand. I like to try to understand the thinking of a proposal, and I always put the best light on it, even if I don't agree. I would understand that that whoever suggested it I would have been thinking about experience, that you would be choosing somebody who has experience in what they are doing, and because of that experience, they would be able to make a better judgment. I think that would be the thinking. I would prefer it not to be there. I would understand. I would think that the Vendors Association would be wise enough to consider that this is a serious task this person is being asked to do, and would consider all that would be necessary for that task. It may be, and experience may be in there, but to say 10 years, it may be somebody who, they got some people, to be truthful, they know land, so to speak, and they experience and how they approach life. They have brought experience not from vending, but from life generally, and you see how they approach things. And they may be very much suited more than somebody who have had 10 years experience. If I may, at this point in time, introduce my my roving communications officer, Robert Maloney. When I did ask the executive to please give him his credentials, he had no come to the association, and I saw a lot in him in one in one session with him, and it was necessary. Things are hot, they say strike when the iron is hot. It was necessary for he to play this role immediately, and he would not have had the experience of a Fox nor the experience in vending as Valentino Barrow or Mr. Alsop, but he has done a tremendous job. So I would like to introduce him and let him speak even on this issue, and if you don't mind, thank you.
No, not at all. Please proceed, Mr. Maloney.
Yes, hello, pleasant good afternoon, distinguished Chair and Parliament.
Still morning.
Okay,
Good morning
apologize,
to you.
pleasant good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Yes, in reference to schedule, the sixth schedule, I see that the Rastafari community has not been mentioned, might have been omitted. I would like to see they also being part of that committee. And as we continue to live in the age that we are living in, we're in 2016 for our 50th Jubilee. Barvin proclaim ourselves as being the living heritage of historic Bridgetown and its garrison. And we see that there is a transformation taking place, not just physically, socially, digitally, but we could say nationally as well as internationally. We are now living in a new historic Bridgetown and its garrison, and also being part of the National Transformation Initiative, which would include the clean and green and all of these different initiatives that the government have seen fit to bring Barbados, as we would say, the vending community, from being what we once were considered to be informal to become more of a formal sector and be able to pay our contributions. So having said that, the organization Barvin is looking forward for the passing of this new policy. As the President rightly identified, the Bill of Rights for us to be vendors, for us to be proud. We know that anything that we do has to be comprehensive. It has to be holistic. And that is the only way that we can move forward. And to be great leaders, we have to have vision, because without a lack of vision, we know that the people will perish. So therefore, Barvin has considered all that has been put before us, and we found it to be comprehensive. We found it to be holistic as well as workable. Again, we have put forward our model is finding solutions through consultation as opposed to confrontation. So we would not be looking, as the President mentioned, for a disorganized or disorderly community in any sector. And this would also, as mentioned, would add to the tourism sector, because rather now than we just having a normal vending, it is not vending as usual. We have the vending community being the spirit, being the national heritage as well as the national treasures of Barbados. As we know in everything, as the President mentioned, the buildings and the structures are fine, but there's nothing that has more life in it than the spirit of the people. And we as the vending community represents that spirit of who we are, as Ms. Motley have rightly said in many occasions, that this is who we are. We are essential, we are front lines, and we are also heroes. So as we continue forward, Barvin would like to see, again, nothing that is one-sided, anything that is imbalanced, but a policy that is comprehensible and workable not just for some, but that it would be also workable for all. And we are not just looking at ourselves as an individual organization or person, but we are now looking to represent Barbados at the national level as well as the international level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maloney. I'm not seeing any other hands raised to seek the floor at this point, but I will now take the opportunity to ask some of the other questions that I wanted to ask. Mr. Alexander and team, this provision, this bill has been treated as, in fact, I described it when I introduced it as being historic, and I think very much, pretty much all of you have agreed with that description. One of the things that I am particularly excited about with regard to this bill is the opportunity for us to create vending zones in Barbados. I see it as an opportunity for us to modernize vending, bring all of the customarily expected amenities to the vendor and the environment of the workplace of the vendor. This government takes some degree of pride in being the administration that has found a way to have lunchrooms become mobile, and that a mobile lunchroom be facilitated equally with a bathroom facility, and that mobile facility can be placed in cane fields, can be placed in sweet potato field, can be moved all across the agricultural sector of Barbados, so that for the first time in the history of this country, gone are the days where the agricultural worker has to be subjected to the indignity, especially the female agricultural worker, subjected to the indignity of having to attend to the call of nature in virtually in broad daylight in the workplace. I see and we see these things as being part of the modernization of this country's, not only its economy, but the very foundation of the existence of our people and the way in which they execute cultural practices which have been the bedrock of their livelihood from as far back as the memory of man can run. Now, having said all of that, in similar vein, it impacts on the vending community. I see the vending zones as an opportunity for us to bring that level of modernization and a level of structure and organization. My question to each of you is, if you were to, and in fact, I don't have to say if you were because you are, you're speaking now to the minister responsible for commerce and by extension the development of the vending practice in Barbados. Question is, simply put, if you were to say to the minister what your ideal vending zone would look like, what would be some of the things that you would wish to see? And I ask you this because while I have shared already on the floor of this house what my mindset is, I do not feel that I am the fount of all knowledge, and I want to get the input from you all who are practicing this on a day-by-day basis. What would it be that you would wish to see the government facilitate you with so that you would have the ideal space within which to do the business of vending?
Thank you again for that question, sir. This bill, with such elements as the vending zones, generally is a bill of affirmative development action. That's the best way that I can describe it. A bill of affirmative development action. It's not waiting for development to just spring up from someplace, but it is actually putting things in place for that development to happen. And we will not be only speaking outside of Bridgetown. We will be speaking from Bridgetown. I see a vending zone. Bridgetown is a vending zone, right? Okay. Whatever we do, it has to be comprehensive. I take this opportunity to say that, make it very clear, as have been said by others, we are comprehensive in our outlook. I'm going to, at this point, after I make these little remarks, I would like to introduce Junior Greenwich, long-time vendor, fighter on the streets, and let him give his input. But what I want to say is that the development on this approach that we have at this point in time, where development is led, not just allowed to happen, but it doesn't happen. It has to be designed. This is so blessed. When we hear, Junior, when we hear that agricultural workers will be given some dignity in having facilities that are coming to cane fields or to come into farms. This is what we're talking about. This is people planning for their people, right? So as to what we would exactly like to see, I know Mr. Greenwich wants to speak. I'm not sure if he will speak directly to this, but I would like to give him the opportunity, if you do not mind, sir.
No, not
to
at
speak
all.
at this
Please,
time.
please proceed, Mr. Greenwich. The floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Junior Greenwich, known in the vendors world as Fox. I'm the steward of Bridge Street. Firstly, I would like to give my condolence to Stanton French of Global Products. I think he passed away on Monday. That's where I buy my products from. Firstly, when you talk about vending space, right? In Bridgetown, vending is all about location.
True.
Vending is about on the front line, because you can't go in the back and vend. You have to be in the mainstream of the people that pass in. And for years, I was vending. I celebrated 30 years in September, my birth month last month. And all of that time, vendors and store owners always at loggerhead because vendors won't occupy in front of the store where the people is passing. And the store owner ain't want that, because he's saying the vendors stopping the people from coming to the store. I can agree with that. I can agree with that too. But you can't take vendors and put them in the back. You gotta put vendors in the zone where people passing. So I think the store owner, especially in Swan Street and Martyr Street and them places, I think these store owners and Barvin, which is my association, should come together and find a solution.
True.
Because every day you go down, you see the vendor come there and the vendor quarreling with the store owner, and is a whole heap of things. So I think we should come to some solution that you got to organize it that vendors and store owners will
Work together.
will work together, and it will be a fair playing field.
Balance.
The vendors saying, the store owners saying that the vendors ain't paying nothing, that the vendors don't do nothing. All the vendors do is come and set up. And that is true for some vendors. Even I hear my president talking just now saying about the $100 that the opposition said is a nuisance fee. For years I'd paying $100. I'd paying $100 from the time I start vending 30 years ago. I'd paying $100 for a license. And when I get the license and I go and set it, the police come around me. So I can't sell and still got a license. So all of them things we got to get organized. So that when the vendor come, if he have to pay a fee, make sure he pay the fee, or he don't pay the fee if they don't pay. But I can tell you the honest truth. I didn't agree with paying a fee. Because things in this new age now, things get so difficult that same $100 that the vendor have to pay for a license can't buy nothing. So when he got to get up for $100 now to pay for a license, as Mr. Alexander saying, to get improvement, he can't buy nothing because things get so expensive, right? Vending years ago was disorganized. Vending now is much organized with the help of Barvin. Vending is organized, but vending still have a lot way to go.
Of course.
Vending still have a lot way to go because so much things have to get organized in vending. The prices of the stock you're buying, the trays you're using. We got to come together and embrace vending just like how the private sector is embrace one another, and that's what we at Barvin. That's what we trying to do. We trying to get all the vendors in Barbados together. Whether you work on the beach, if you work in St. Lucie, we want all the vendors come and join. So we will have an organization with a voice that we could put forward our proposals, put forward our case and things we have to do. But we have the honest way we can go forward of vending in the city is if the vendors and the store owners come to some sort of agreement. If not, we ain't gonna get nowhere. Because the vendors want to be organized. Vendors want to be selling up front, and the store owners ain't want them there. I wouldn't say want them there. Want the space so people could get in. So we just gotta come together and work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. So we have. You would know that we in our documents we have detailed what we would want to see in such vending facilities, right? The zones outside. These zones will be obviously they will be according to how they set up, what the purpose for which they set up, because we do not believe too that everybody should be vending the same thing. No. If you do that, right, there is a economic theory, right, which is also a common sense, right, where you have the law of diminishing returns. Anytime that you got too much of anything, there will be a decline, right? There will be a decline in value and revenue. So we do not want a situation where I know politicians, I know the politicians would like that there be 1 million vendors so they can say that they have 1 million jobs. But that can't happen. Then we get half a cent. No, that can't happen. So it still has to be a balance, organized.
Agree.
Right? So whatever we detail those things, that would be a long process to speak, of all that we would want in a vending zone. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I was trying to get from you some specifics, but I think I understand. You've left me clearly. I agree. Let me make it very clear. I agree with you that you can't have the vending zones almost being, you didn't use the word, but cluttered,
Right.
so that you have so many people in a zone that it makes it economically unbeneficial to be in that setting.
Right.
I also sense that what you're saying is that you would like to see some variety.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. There may be also areas which are specialized. For example, now I know this may be more a question for the wayside, the association of wayside vendors, but let's look at the highway. Along the highway, we have many people, for example, who are selling coconuts. You may well see a zone within which you have more than one person selling coconuts. It may be a few people in that zone who will be coconut vendors. But I understand that the point you're trying to rivet home is that you want zones to be structured in such a way that they're not so packed with people that it is economically unbeneficial to the person trying to function within the zone.
Minister, if I may, I would like Robert Maloney to speak on the coconut. It's coconut
I would
situation.
be very happy to hear him.
The truth is that we aside vendors do not represent
Oh, sorry.
the coconut vendors.
It is you.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, sir.
Yes.
I did not want to be eroding the base of your constituency.
Yeah, yes, sir. Okay, Robert Maloney. Yes, please.
Yes, pleasant good afternoon, morning once again. Yes, so as we consider the coconut vending, we would consider the health benefits, seeing that we have the initiatives for 2030 dealing with climate change. As we know that the coconut is one of the most important fruits in this time. There are many benefits that can be derived from the coconut palm in many different areas. So we would know for sure that the coconut lay-bys, where we know that we don't want to have persons in the way of destructions of proceeding traffic. So if we can remove that and put them in some safe areas, well, we know that that is a plus not just for the coconut vendors, but also for the persons doing the sales. Again, we are considering our children, knowing that they are the future, and that health is something that we are also promoting. The coconut water would be a good, ideal product that would tend to that. Dealing with the climate change, we know water is very, very important, and the coconut has many, many, many benefits that can be derived. And we're also considering food security. So in the food security, we can also look now, rather than just the small crops that is short term, that would help us to reduce our foreign deficits and the money that we're spending. We know that the fruits, we see the Heart and Stroke Foundation is speaking also about healthy Barbados. So within this new Barbados, we are looking to get away with a lot of these negative trends, seeing that it is leading to a lot of obesities in our children, a lot of non-communicable diseases that is also adding to the factors of the COVID-19. So all of these are things that we are considering when we say we are thinking comprehensive and holistically. And then we can tap in now to our natural fruits, where we see now that that have also become a trend around the island. Many persons now are seeking to ply their trade, and again, it is contributing to the climate change effect that the world is experiencing at this time. Yes, so Barvin's role, we have a national coconut stakeholders platform, and Barvin sits on that committee where we are strategically organizing. There are a few industries. CARDI is also part of that, the Caribbean Development Institute, and they are seeing the coconut industry now as being a multi-billion-dollar industry that we and our future children can benefit from it. We know at this time that employment is very low, so we're also looking to tackle the unemployment issues. So once we can tap into our natural resources, we know we do not have many, but our fruits can lead to considerable benefits that we can derive to help also tackle the obesity issues and many other non-communicable diseases and different issues that we have. In historic Bridgetown, once again, it would be very, very, very nice to see that we don't have natural resources. What we have is a pool of collective insight within ourselves. So once we can continue to show, not just to ourselves, but to our nation, the spirit of our country and who we are, and that we are not just thinking one-minded and one-sided, and it's just about money, but there are many other benefits that can be derived, then we can see the benefit of such a national policy, as the President say, that will once again engender pride and industry into ourselves and into our children. And this is the way that the policy is leading. And Barvin, again, once again, thank you. After 333 years, as was mentioned by you, the Honorable Minister of Commerce, right, we can see the benefits, again, of such a policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maloney. Now, I think, Mr. Maloney, you raised a very important matter there, the National Coconut Stakeholders Platform. Obviously, this is targeted at the development of the coconut industry holistically, not just at the sales or commercial end, which we participate in almost right across the island on a weekly basis. I think that this is a matter that would warm the heart of the Minister of Agriculture. And it certainly is something that I would want to get some more information on. Now, you can either, if you feel that you are in a position to share more information on the National Coconut Stakeholders Platform, at this point, I'd be happy to hear. If you are not in a position to do so now, then I will undertake to liaise with you after, because it is also something that from my own ministry's perspective, it is an issue that we would want to get a greater feel, or certainly I would want to get a better understanding of what you're about and how we could better participate in and assist in the development of this. You would need to tell me though, Mr. Maloney, is it something you would want to elaborate on at this stage, or should we do this at a different point?
Yes, Honorable Minister. Again, there's just many benefits that is documented that can be derived from the coconut sector. So the National Stakeholders Platform, along with Barvin, have engaged in a number of initiatives where we are looking, as you mentioned, to establish certain coconut vending zone, where the coconut would be the main product being played and being sold. That persons can get the delicious water that we are so accustomed to, along with the fresh jelly fruit. So it's all in itself, it speaks for itself, where the industry is a worldwide industry right now. Once we can meet the national standards, and we had some discussions on that, which is quite simple. You need to harvest the coconuts at the proper harvesting time. Can't reap them too small. Proper bottling, sanitizing, labeling, and once you have them refrigerated at the right temperature, then it should be ready for export, where you could export it to any desired market. Again, it is an area that can also benefit us when it comes to climate change. Water is very important. Persons like normal water, but if we could get our children into drinking more coconut water, which is a lot much sweeter along with the jelly, then there's quite a few benefits that can be derived. As I mentioned, the Heart and Stroke Foundation is pushing that initiative. And in the new historic Bridgetown, well, these are things that Barvin would like to see come to fruition, where persons now can engage and have easily access. So we would need, as the feed program, and there are a few programs, food security, all of these things that we are considering on the board, and coconut groves, that a few acres of land be also delegated for the persons that would wish to ply their trade in that industry. So it is something very fruitful, something that can be very productive, not just to us as individuals, but as we can see, it has broader bases and broad benefits that all of us as a whole, as a country, can benefit from. That is my submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maloney. Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, let me start by congratulating the members of Barvin for what I consider to be very important comments to this piece of statute that we are seeking to bring to right a number of the wrongs that took place in Vending in Barbados over many decades. However, I wish to note that the conversation as it relates to coconut water and standards, there is a food safety bill that is currently before CPC that will clearly outline the standards to be followed and all practices in terms of bottling, etc., shelf life, those types of things will be captured in that statute. And so therefore, I will be more than happy to engage Mr. Maloney and his team, because we're currently doing public consultations with regard to the food safety legislation and our sanitary and phytosanitary legislation and project. So I thought I'll bring that clarity so that Barvin will be aware if they're not so already, but equally for the members of this committee to be aware as well.
Very grateful to you, Minister. So there you have it, Mr. Maloney and Mr. Alexander. The Minister of Agriculture is pointing us to the fact that there will be I almost said a companion piece of legislation, but there will be a piece of legislation which will come from his ministry that will facilitate some of these considerations that we are interested in here. And so you should look forward to some consultation with him and his officers in the not too distant future. It is a good and useful thing, I believe, for the right hand of government to know what the left hand is doing, and this is clearly an opportunity for us to demonstrate that we are working in sync to advance the interests not only of the people of Barbados broadly, but the communities which are involved in farming and vending respectively. Now I'm not seeing any other members who are desirous of the floor, so let me just help us to tighten up this legislation while we have you gentlemen here. There are a couple of things that, as chair of the process, I have had on my mind and I wanted to get your views on. The first, I think, was already spoken to some extent by Ms. Toni Moore when she made her intervention. I just want to go back there very briefly for the purposes of clarity, Mr. Alexander. I understood your answer to her question to suggest that you don't have any particular strong feelings about having a vendor being a representative of the vending community on the basis of his years of experience. You, as I understood what you to be saying, what you were saying. Mr. Maloney, for example, would have been brand new to the business or the association, but you saw in him those things, and certainly I've heard in him in his submissions those things that make him stand out. And so therefore you did not feel it necessary to tie this to a number of years' experience. If that is that correct, first of all?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, fine. Now, being guided by you, it would therefore mean that we could replace the requirement as we have it in the bill. And I have with me the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel, who is the person charged with the responsibility of drafting out this legislation. We could replace this requirement for a number of years' experience, 10 years of experience, with simply making it being a vendor who is nominated by the organization of, or the organizations, plural, representative of vendors in Barbados. My only concern with that is that there's more than one organization representative of vendors, and I would need to get from you your views on whether you feel that Barvin, for example, and the Association of Wayside Vendors, and any other that might emerge or might exist, could collectively, would it be reasonable to expect that you collectively could nominate a person from amongst you to be the representative on this committee, which would be I'm just trying to get the title of the committee. It would be the National Vending Appeals Tribunal. And that tribunal would be the appellate body, which would be comprised of an attorney at law, a vendor, and a person with knowledge and experience in the business of vending and the operation of markets. And that tribunal would function for about 3 years at a time. It would be appointed by the minister responsible for legal and judicial affairs. And the business of that tribunal would be to hear any appeals. For example, if as minister I suspend somebody's license and the body is aggrieved and feel that the minister didn't act right, so they go and they appeal to this body. Or for example, it may be that the manager of the vending zone may take a certain course of action or make a certain decision that the vendor feels aggrieved by, and he wishes to appeal that. Now, do you feel, therefore, that we could comfortably rely on the associations representing vendors to just recommend from among their body of members a person, howsoever experienced, but a person who they look to, like for example, Brother Barra, who been in this for 50 years, and say that this is a man that we want to represent us.
Right.
Can we do it that way?
Well, first of all, what I challenge me there, to be honest, is how do we select that person? If we're talking about Barvin, obviously, that would be a simple matter. Barvin, through his executive, right, that is what we do, through his executive, would select such a person. But we like to be fair. We don't see Barvin as a colossal, in the sense that there can be no other persons representing vendors, representing their people. No, we do not, right? So we will never disregard for instance, as I've said over and over, the role that Wayside Vendors Association have played, regardless to whatever their membership is at this point in time. We would wish to be in some kind of situation where all who are involved in the representation, that we can have, I don't know, a body of some sort, so we can do these things. It's happening. When I say this, what You know, they say life happens, right? This is life. We ain't got everything figured out already. We too much like to pretend that, right? I'm not about that. Barvin is not about that. We are about real things, and this here has now, I sure, challenged the minds right here of Barvin, right? They know how their president mind thinks for certain, right? And I know that they are all very, very much individuals with their individual mind. You hear how Fox Fox says something opposite to me. That's what is in Barvin, right? But we would want to have a situation where our side is not feared because Barvin is representing. We ain't gonna play representation. We ain't waiting on anybody to represent. We're gonna represent. But if anybody step forward or group comes forward, we would want a situation where we are not fighting against one another, but we are working together. As I said, Robert Maloney would know, right, when one organization wanted to fight us, I was in the paper saying certain things. I said to him, sir, we do not divide our house. We will have no comment. We do not divide our house, and we will move forward with that understanding. So, I am not. This is something we have to work out. I would not be that. I would not want that at those types of at levels they have more than one. That Barvin alone decides. But if Barvin has to, Barvin will be there to do so.
Well, I'm not
You know?
asking you to do that. I
No.
actually was asking you what you thought about the proposal that you could consult with each other. You are right when you say it is one house.
Right.
But in that house there are more than one room.
Yeah, there's more than one.
And so I would want to know that you should be able to consult with the room next door.
True.
And throw up a name.
True. And
If that is practical, then we can write the legislation to accommodate that.
Yes,
but
please.
I wanted to hear your views on that first. But
Yes,
before you
yes,
answer,
please.
let me just indicate that I see Senator Wiggins' hand, and I also see Ms. Moore desires to speak again. But I will allow Mr. Alexander to complete his thoughts on this matter. Please proceed, sir.
yeah, I think I have concluded for the. You're quite right. I think we have concluded.
So
on
you
that.
believe that it would be reasonable for us to anticipate that a conversation could take place and between Wayside Vendors and Barvin, a name be agreed upon?
Yes, please.
Okay. Senator Wiggins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I want to congratulate the Barvin and members that are present there, and obviously congratulate Mr. Alastair Alexander on his independence honor of a GCM, and as what I was spoken in the Senate previously, I know of him and many of the vendors out there who have been in the vineyard toiling for a long time, so I do sincerely appreciate all your efforts today. To continue from where you left off there with respect, I was thinking that maybe you can form an umbrella body for the sake of this legislation similar to C2SAB, where in terms of theoretically speaking, I'm not sure if practically speaking, that umbrella body similar to C2SAB can be the one voice of the vendors in situations that we're discussing today. And I'm also thinking, as you know, Mr. Chairman, that I would have raised before the whole question of zones. I heard Mr. Maloney speak to the issue of having, correct me if I'm wrong, a zone especially for coconut vendors. But I was thinking when, in terms of zones, that if we have vending zones, that these zones will be of a multi-purpose nature, where you will have fruits and vegetables, you can have clothing, you can have storage, because I do believe that, I know years ago, in the now public market that has been demolished, I think some of the vendors used to store their produce on site. So when we're thinking about these new vending zones, I'm thinking that we can have good physical structures because Oystins, look at Oystins. Oystins is a prime example of a great vending zone in Barbados, where you have the storage, you have the ice, and you have various vendors. I know it's primarily fish, but you have people there selling jewelry. And then, of course, you have the other restaurants in the area. And of course, if we're thinking about vending zones, especially off my favorite spot on the ABC highway, you can have, rather than mobile lunchrooms or mobile amenities like toilet facilities, the government should be able to acquire land in some of these areas to physically build these amenities so that the vendors can use. Similarly, amenities can be built. I'm going off script a little bit. These types of amenities, let's say for taxi persons in Bridgetown. So these are the new concepts in terms of going forward, amenities to complement these zoning activities that we're looking at. So once again, I want to thank and compliment the vendors who are here, and I'm wishing you all the best as we go forward in this new step that we're taking. But one other point, Mr. Chairman, I had mentioned it to another member of the committee, but I do feel that maybe the Royal Barbados Police Force, soon to be the Barbados Police Service, should be represented on this committee, because so that you would not have this clash of vendors and police as we go forward. So if the police is actually physically represented on the committee rather than in a consultative role, they can then, when they meet with their association, discuss what has happened at the committee level, and there will not be so much tension with vendors having to produce the license, get up and move on with your produce, and being evicted and their produce being confiscated. So I think that a member of the force should be a permanent member of this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Wiggins. You said a number of things. Let me just deal with the last one first. I want to remind you that I think I understand what you're saying, but just for the avoidance of doubt, this bill removes the police completely from the process of regulating vending.
Yes.
But having said so, I sense that what you're urging us to do is to have them involved in the consultative way in which the National Vending Committee functions, whereby concerns relating to those things that would ordinarily fall within the scope of regulating anything in Barbados can have their input. So that even though they are not going to be responsible for interfacing with vendors in terms of the day-by-day management of their enterprises or their endeavors, what we would have is the voice of the police, similar to how we have the voice of the wayside vendors and the barvin and the manager of markets, etc., so that discussion, mature discussion, can take place. That's what you're suggesting. And I don't see anything wrong with that. In fact, I think that perhaps is a very good idea. It certainly will change the historical nature of the interaction between the two entities, because I think, as Mr. Alexander indicated from his very opening remarks, the history has been a tortured one, with vendors having to feel as though they were under the heel, so to speak, of the police. And this now brings everybody as equals to sit at a table to discuss matters of mutual concern, which is how we should be treating to this business. So I have no difficulty with that. And in fact, I would want to ask the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel to make a notation of the desirability of having the police sit as part of the National Vending Committee. We will still have to refine the full membership of the National Vending Committee, but I think the idea of having them as part of the parties that discuss these things is desirable.
Honorable-
Now, sorry.
Yes, Honorable Minister. We fully support that submission. We have, if possible again, we have here in our midst, for us, a very distinguished gentleman by the name of Leonard Alsop, a man who knows my father, who is a contemporary of my father, and it is because of my father the horrible treatment meted out to my own father that I started the organization Barvin. I promised that day when it is every time I think about it, it is emotionally hard to think of him being put into a police vehicle like a common criminal. It's really hard. And Mr. Alsop is here. He is a veteran of the struggle. As I said, a contemporary of my father. And I would like him to, if possible, to make some remarks. We talk about the police, you know, and he knows from that time. I think that his submission at this point, if you don't mind, sir.
No, he is
would be
most
great.
welcome. He's most
Right.
welcome, Mr. Alexander.
Mr. Alsop, your mic is on. Press your mic.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Chairman,
Good afternoon
member-
to you.
members of Parliament, and other distinguished guests. This historic bill is very important because it brings back memories of how vending have been. As you may have read or know, vending came from a long way back when people used to be bought from the plantation when they come into town or anywhere to sell their products. Funny thing that the agriculture people are not mentioned in this bill. But those farmers, when they bring the things down to town, they'll be arrested and carried before the law courts, and they will have to pay money. They have come right the way down till you get what you call the Modernization Act, which is a permit, which tells you the time you should sell, what products you must be selling, and what time you should leave. The thing is about it is that during my time of vending, which is over 50 years, I have not gone to anything with the police because you have to have an understanding when you're speaking with people how to speak. And a police may come to you and he may not be polite. And when you go to explain to him certain things about your permit or why you're selling without a permit, he may tell you shut up your mouth. And he may be very hostile, which will cause a vendor to act in a different way. And when he said before the law courts, I always ask myself, how is that you could be charged for trying to help yourself by selling, and the same money that you want to pay your rent or buy food, you have to pay to the court? I used to ask myself that question all the time. That's why I said that this bill is a very piece of legislation that you, the present minister, and the minister before have started to, and the Prime Minister, Mayor Mortley, have been able to, and her cabinet have been able to bring this bill up to where it is now, because it helped clear those misunderstandings that people can sell without being a criminal. And the important part of it that I want to say is that, as I now heard one of my colleagues talk about the store owners, you have to know that the store owner don't want his door blocked or his show window. You would not like it to happen to you. So you must try to avoid yourself in selling without blocking the door, the entrance, or the store windows. And you and the store owner will come to an understanding. You'll find you and the store owner come to an understanding where things can go well. I'm telling you because, as I said before, I have been in it 50 years. And I had to learn how to discipline myself. You will find that though you may be privileged to sell when this bill is passed, that you cannot go and fight your brother. He may be there selling for maybe 10 years or 5 years, and because you have the privilege to come and sell, you want to go and fight your brother for spot instead of looking for a space for yourself. And that is what caused the problem. You have to be disciplined to see that that type of thing don't happen. And in that way, you and the police will not have to come to any disagreement, because it is going to involve the police to get that settled. And you have to know to conduct yourself like a business person, because vending is a business, you know. It is a business. You grow from a small vendor, then you find yourself going overseas and bringing in goods, and you become a big businessman. So that's how the business starts. See, the agricultural person may bring his fruits down to Bridgetown, he may sell, and later on he got a van and become a big business person. So in all, however you look at it, you are a business person. They used to call it hawker. They used to mark hawker, a badge. And we moved that because that was not a nice word. Vending is good. It's when you look, you may see in the papers, even in law papers, to call it the vending, the vendor. And in papers, you see the talk about the vending or the vendor. So it's nothing wrong with being a vendor. See? It's a very important business, and it should be treated like that.
Agreed.
So therefore, conduct yourself in a disciplined way, and you will be respected. See? Try that when the police come, try to reason with the police. Don't abuse the police. Police may give you some words that you don't like, but you go bite your lips and try to keep back the words. Don't be abusive. And you will find out that you and the police get along well, because I've had some difficult times with an officer who was an inspector. You will know who he's speaking about. And now he's resigned. When you see me, he's the only body who was in Vending that he could speak to, because he have done so much wrong. When the server can't find you, he come and say, "Hey, Franklin, I was looking for you ever since. How you doing?" And he would take up the summons and say, "This is for you." That's the type of person he was. And he left the force, and people have that business against him. See? So that just shows you how spiteful it could be. You may meet the police, don't want to hear you. You confiscate your goods, throw them in the van. You know, like I read white gentleman who you know he have passed, and those were the things, the times. See,
No,
nobody wants to hear the feel that as long as you is a hawker or you selling on the streets, that you could be treated anywhere. But this bill here that is present now in Parliament will change all of that. And you, Barvin, and your organization.
And
to
Mr.
try to
Also,
enforce it.
I think that that is exactly the point you just made is correct. What we're trying to do is to change all of that. And what I would like to hear now from you and equally some of the others next to you is your views about, we have used a lot of fancy language. We say that we have decriminalized this, which means that there will no longer be any criminal penalties. We've taken this completely out of the remit of the police so that management of the business of vending can be dealt with in the same way that you would deal with, if you have a challenge, for example, with a lawyer. You don't necessarily, though some have been and should be carried to the court. The reality is that you can deal with this through the Bar Association and have a civil dispute resolution process. Now, we are proposing in the page 66 of the legislation. So if you have it in front of you, sir, or if Mr. Alexander has it in front of him or whoever, I don't know how many copies you all have with you. At page 66 of the legislation, you see something called the 7th schedule. And this is penalties. This speaks to administrative penalties. Now, I'm going to invite your comments on this because I want for you all to understand that gone now forever are the days when a police officer, as you have said, Mr. Alsop, would pick up your things and put you in a van and the things in the van or whatever, and next thing you have to appear in front of a court. But a person who contravenes provisions of this legislation will be liable to pay an administrative penalty. What I am trying to find out from you all are your views about the administrative penalties. The penalties are outlined at page 66, so that, for example, if you're vending without a license, contrary to the section 4, subsection 2 of the legislation, you will pay a penalty of $500. If you're vending with a license that has been suspended or revoked, so in other words, it didn't say that you didn't have a license, but you had one, you did something wrong and got it revoked, but you still decide that you're going to be spiteful and you're going to vend anyhow, that penalty would be $1,500. You have another one, which would be vending outside of a vending zone. That is $1,500. And you see them there in front of you. What I want, because these are proposals, and what I want to hear from the practitioners, which is you all, is whether you feel that these penalties, first of all, are reasonable, and secondly, if there is a desirability of having the penalties being paid by installment, because in another part of the legislation, which is not immediately at the top of my mind, it says you have to pay within 14 days of the notice that you have infringed and have to pay a penalty. So we were thinking at the level of this committee about that 14 days, and I'm a man that like to be fair. I know that in these circumstances, it may be difficult for some people to pay within 14 days. But I want to hear from you as to what your views are, first of all, on the reasonableness, and then the second aspect would be the desirability of being able to pay off the penalty by way of installment over a longer period of time. The floor is yours, gentlemen, all.
Yes,
Mr.
Honorable.
Chairman, I disagree with the $500 in section vending without a license. It is unfair when you cannot get a license, which we call a permit, to sell and be asked to pay $500 if store charge. I disagree with that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you clearly, Mr. Alsop. Say again, please.
I disagree
Mm-hmm.
with selling without a license, having to pay $500 when you cannot get a license, which is a permit.
Let me say, Mr. Alsop, if I may intervene. We are speaking now about a different regime. There was a time, and it still exists in our minds, that there are no license to be given, right? The problem, we never objected to licensing. We wanted license. We were told that it was given the impression, they gave the impression to the population that we just did not want to go and get licenses. And it was never true. We tried, but we could not get licenses. We have a situation now where...
Please elaborate. I am going to allow you to speak fully.
Right.
But I think the committee needs to understand this because I
Right.
certainly don't. Why
Okay.
would you not be able to get a license, sir?
They were not giving us. They were just not giving us. Consecutive administrations were doing the same thing. We're not issuing any licenses, right? And there was a plan. To be truthful, when Barvin started, there was a plan, and it is documented in the media, where they had intended to put all the vendors of Bridgetown into markets, to put all. They made that attempt, okay, even with myself and many others. So it was a straightforward thing.
So to control,
So
you were
you
not
applied.
you applied for a license.
I could not get it.
And the government of the day was saying you cannot get any
They
license.
could not get it. They didn't even say so. You just could not get it.
Not
Right?
giving
And
you
then the
anything.
police would come and ask you, where's your license? And there was no license. And Fox
So
would be able
people
to tell
in
you,
Barbados, Mr. Alexander, because I need to be clear on this matter.
Yeah.
You're saying to me that people in Barbados, working class people, let's be very frank, because
Yeah.
this is not the people that live. I don't think there are many members of Barvin who live at an address called Anybody
No,
Heights
no.
or Anybody Terrace.
no.
Huh?
Yes.
So people from working class Barbados are trying to earn an honest living.
Right.
They apply for a license to vend in the land of their birth. And they're told by a government that is supposed to be administering their well-being that they are not getting any license, full stop.
Full stop. Full stop. There are few persons who were privileged for whatever reason. I mean few. Right? You probably could count them by your hand in the city that had a license. Okay? And Mr. Alsop may have been one of those people who were fortunate enough to have had a license. But he would tell you that the majority of his fellow vendors could not obtain one, right? And we're not talking about that situation. We are talking about a situation now. And two, another thing too, even how to get the license, people didn't even sure which agency, who to get to. You hear all sorts of different things, right? So this is the reality. We are saying, well, Barvin, to be truthful, for licenses to be given. When I met Fox, for instance, I remember Fox said to me, I saw him appear many times before the law court. I saw one newspaper article that carried his story, broke my heart. He said he used to sell drugs. He tell the judge he used to sell drugs. He decided he don't want that. He have children, and he do not want his children to come and see him doing that, and that he wanted to do something else, and he decided on vending. All the doing is criminalizing him. Right? I remember that. When I met him, I said, sir, if you need any assistance, contact me, and he said, "Sir," he said, "Alexander, you can't help me." It was so hopeless at the time. He did not even believe that Barvin, he has fought this struggle for long, and don't care what you do, right? It was one thing. They ain't getting a license, and they're coming for you, right? And Mr. Alsop is saying the same thing. Before Barvin, it was that. And we must introduce, at this point in time, the name of the Honorable Mayor Motley. Barvin made contact with her, and it was a historic meeting. It is at that meeting, she promised, the first meeting, she said, what you are saying, Mr. Alexander, is all true. She said these exact words, "I do not believe in Obia, but we were to meet. All that you are saying in this letter is correct. We must change this, and I will do all in my power to help you." And it is through fighting with her, fighting not against her, with her, that we were able to access these licenses. Robert would be able to, he want to speak on this issue, right? Yes.
Yes, once again, Honorable Minister. Barvin's view on that matter is that we have always viewed permits of the means of maintaining order. And we have fought and had acts on many occasions where we was denied. So once again, rather than we being honest and noble persons looking to provide for our family, we was more looked at as criminals. I remember myself years ago when I was selling the natural juices. I came from America and I was looking to provide for myself. And when I went to, excuse me, when I went to my spot where I had accustomed plying my trade, I was met with two officers, I think from the Defense Force or the Royal Barbados Police Force, cannot remember exactly, with some high-powered rifles and telling me move and keep moving. And they cleared the whole streets, and that is when I was able to join the organization Barvin, because I was not desirous for my mother in America to hear that I am a criminal in Barbados. In America, I might have run in a little with the law, not due to things I wanted to do, but that was that story, and I wanted to bring a conclusion to that. Earlier, as we were speaking...
May I ask Mr. Maloney, what was that spot?
The top of Swan Street.
Swan Street?
Yeah, the last street at the top of Swan Street. It was not like on Swan Street, but on the little corner street that was adjacent to Swan Street.
Go ahead.
Yes, and the ministress had mentioned earlier concerning the coconut zones. Yes, I was not indicating that it was strictly for the coconut vendors. I was just saying that would have been one of the highlights, but we know that in any vending zone, that it have to be multifaceted, meaning including many different persons that can be reasonably accommodated to make it attractive and aesthetic to the zone. Thank you very much, sir.
That is understood and appreciated. Okay, and I thank you for that context, gentlemen. The question that I had before you was the issue of the penalties, because those horrible days are over.
Yes, please.
I remember when I introduced this piece of legislation, Mr. Alexander, you will recall, I made reference to the fact that it would have been, I think, about 1800 that people were moved from Swan Street for vending and sent by way of the brutal forces administering these matters at the time to a place called the Shambles. The name speaks for itself. I was not as aware that it was within recent memory that men with rifles and so on would have been treating to folks in Swan Street in the same way.
Yes, please.
It tells its own story.
Well, let me say something. The history, we have to really speak, because these things are hidden from all people, although it's happening in public, right? Sir, right? And there's so many people who don't even understand the issues, right? This same gentleman is speaking about this particular policeman. I remember my father was vending at the time by St. George Street, and the policeman told him to move. And my vehicle was there, and I was parking my father. I was trying to get my father loaded up as fast as possible so that he would not be arrested or anything like that. I didn't even know that my father is so cool. I did not know that he had that aggressive side. I heard him said these words, and the first time I knew that my father had been arrested for vending or had any convictions for vending. This will tell you a lot of these things, even although I was in his household, I did not know. He's feeding me, sending me to school. Right? My sister became the commissioner, the first lady commissioner of Inland Revenue, Sabina Walcott Denny. He is who sent her to school. Schooled her. And he is saying to me, as I am packing him as fast as I could, I'm frightened. And I'm packing him in the bar van to protect you, nothing so. And I'm packing my father into the van, his things into the van, and my father says, Alistair, I have 18 convictions for selling. He says, I have 18 convictions, and all is for selling. So take your time. He could do what he wants to do. And that went through my heart. That was the first shot, so to speak, that went through my heart concerning this matter. I believe in the providence of God. I believe in Almighty God. I know that this is a movement of God. And that was my first lesson as to what the reality was. And even I thought about it, and I said, my father has 18 convictions to raise me, to send me school, to do all this that he has done for his children. And it was heartbreaking. And that moment when he was arrested, it was too much. It was just too much. These are the realities. These are the realities. 18 convictions.
Is it to
and
your
I did not
knowledge,
know.
Alistair?
Yes, please.
Is it to your knowledge that whether or not the convictions that your father would have been saddled with have ever stood in the way of any things that he's attempted to do, for example, obtain a visa or travel, jobs or anything like that?
Well, let me say, I would not know. He have never spoken concerning that matter, but I know that there are vendors who this has happened to them. And
when you say this has happened, what is this?
That they have run into difficulty because with as far as the certificate of character is concerned, right? Will have a conviction on it. Right? I know that for a fact. So this is so, right? And we are looking to see that slate cleanse. They call it what? Where's this official term now?
Expungement from the record,
sir. Yeah. The PRO knows that word well. You got any convictions, sir? Yes, please. All right.
You can take some
Fox
comfort.
Say he has 25, so he will let his expunged.
You can take some comfort that
Yes.
this committee has also been looking at the question of expungement from the record.
Thank you, sir.
And though I cannot say definitively at this stage, I don't want you to leave here thinking that I have said definitively.
Yeah.
But certainly, we are all gathered here so inclined.
Robert Maloney would like to say something again. But let me let Valentino Barrow speak on the penalties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted us to come back to the penalties.
Yeah,
please.
he was speaking on other things, but he wants to speak on the penalties.
I presume by now it's afternoon.
You put on the mic.
Yes, it is afternoon. It is
Okay,
afternoon.
good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon to you.
I really had a lot to say, but Barvin and its executive is so close. When the president speaks, he could actually speak for us all, because we are all in one accord, as it was said in the Bible. I reviewed this policy last night. I had attempted to do so prior, but due to what is going on with the business and other relevant matters pertaining to the vendors, I didn't get the opportunity to fully review it, but I took the opportunity last night. I want to say that when I was a youth with my granddad selling bread, if a lot of you are young, you might not remember the bread carts in those days, way back in the days of old. I was very observant. And a lot of atrocities, indignities mentioned by previous members of the association that spoke. It's true. And all I could do now is add fuel to fire, as they would say. I remember as a little boy, around the age of 12, a young lad, on the premises of Fairchild Street Market, I would see a lot of confusion sometimes, and I realized that police and people scuffling, people taking flight. Some would go, knew some, a run for the money, where they were fleeing, trying to evade capture. And I not want to put things to my own understanding, ask my granddad, like in Beijing terms, well, then people do that again, treat so. He said, well, maybe they're not legal, they don't have a license to sell, or they shouldn't be selling there. He leave it at that, but I pondered upon it. And then as becoming older, I going now to a different institution of training, Polytechnic in those days. And I passed in the bridge on more than one occasion within the vicinity of the city. I noticed such atrocities being committed. In my opinion, I deemed them atrocities. I would see fruits, vegetables, as my wife has said, being skedaddled into the river, trodden upon. Some even end up in the road, and cars got to try to shift. And people, as I said prior, taking flight to evade capture because it was not a civil penalty as is being proposed in this bill or this policy. It was criminal. And I walked again and I think about all these things because, as I said prior, I had selling in my veins. Although it was very good when going to the Polytechnic, I wasn't a brainchild, but relatively bright, I still had selling in my veins. I wanted to be involved in sales. I said, well, look, let me tell you, I got to look away because I can't see myself running this way. I can't see myself incurring all these things that I considered, through my view of a youthful eye, as wrong. But as I reviewed this policy last night, I noticed from STEM that a lot of these, if not all, the dignities have been addressed. We live in an imperfect world, and I never and will never believe in perfection, except maybe when we die, if there is that place that people refer to. But I have noticed that this addressed many of the indignities, the atrocities committed on people deemed hawkers or vendors. One, no more criminal penalties irrespective of the contravention of the criteria or policies or protocols laid out in this National Vendors Bill. You now have civil penalties. Although I want to put it out there that this is not a reason for people who set their sights on vending for whatever calling, whether it's to substitute their economical viability, whether or not is because of loss of a job or opportunity, lack of opportunity, whether or not it's just because, as I am, they have selling in the blood. Everything is laid out here, according to my understanding, my minute understanding. Everything is laid out here where they can follow the criteria. They can know now, they don't have to guess where to go in relation of what type of vending they want to pursue, whether it be occasional, vocational, as my friend would say, a member of the executive, career vending, or you just want to supplement the income. It is all addressed within the pages of this proposed policy. And like, pardon? And like anything else, it might need a tidbit tweaking as we go along to see how feasible it is, as we actually experience it in the working or the rolling out thereof. As far as the question pertaining to the amenities that Barvin would like to see in vending zones, that also, I realize, have been addressed, and certain amenities suggested, at least the basics that are there, covering for the vendor, which would be a kiosk of some design for the vendor and their produce or their wear, proper facility to, how should I put it, relieve yourself from nature's call, and to sanitize, and I'm sure that patrons too could utilize. And those are two of the basic factors. One of the other things mentioned is storage, and I presume that would be according to the vending zone and the type of vending that is being done, whereas whether it is just a standard storage or where it would include refrigeration. So I'm getting to that. I wanted to address that as well. As far as the penalties are concerned, I see the bill as also leading to organizing the sector and vending. So hence, the penalties are a deterrent, as are most penalties. I think that's the intended purpose of them.
That's right.
The amounts, I cannot really comment on the amounts. I figure the amounts are geared to deterring the individual from contravening the protocols and the criteria set out. As far as the question pertaining to if there should be forthwith within 14 days, I beg to differ on that. And I think especially in these times or any times, we have to look at a little leniency in there, because we do not want failure to pay the penalty. You would then incur another penalty on that. So we, or in my humble opinion, I would suggest that it be broken down, especially in light of these environmental conditions and economical conditions. It could be broken down to a level that would make it more, how should I put it, feasible to the vendor to be able to pay.
More manageable.
More manageable is the word, yes. That they'll be able to pay. And they don't have to go there and do something in an effort to get it, to find themselves in more, how should I put it?
Understood.
A serious position.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Barrow, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I think that your presentation has been very fulsome and very direct and helpful as far as I'm concerned. We have been looking at these matters, as I said to you, and I think we now have a good grasp on where and how we can proceed. My thinking at this stage, colleagues, is that we should pause, take lunch, and come back after lunch, continuing with the Barvin. I'm hoping, Mr. Alexander and colleagues, that you all can join us for lunch and that you can come back at 2 o'clock. I promise not to keep you for very long after 2 o'clock, because there is another entity that has to make its appearance before the committee. But there are still one or two things that I'm sure that we need to tidy up before you go. And I believe that there may still be one or two others. Mr. Prescott has just joined us. I welcome him. I tried in your absence, Mr. Prescott, to raise those matters which I know you had voiced before. But if there are some others that you may wish to canvass before the Barvin members, then you're free to do so after lunch as well. But that is my proposal, that we take lunch now. It is 1/4 the hour, and that we come back in 45 minutes, and that Mr. Alexander, Maloney, Mr. Barrow, Mr. Greenidge, and Mr. Alsop, all of you gentlemen, we would be delighted if you would join us downstairs for lunch at this point. Thank you. Can I have a motion that we suspend until 2 o'clock, please?
So move, sir.
Minister Humphrey, I'm grateful. Seconded by Minister Ford. We stand suspended until 2 o'clock.